Hey there. Well, I think today I'm going to read a little bit from one of the chapters of Going Alone, namely My Muse is a Corpse, which, interestingly, I had such a hard time with that title um, early on. I thought it was such a nasty title. My Muse is a Corpse, even just saying it. But now it's so apt. And hello, Cloud S. You are indeed the first. It's so apt and so much exactly what I meant to say in that chapter. So it doesn't seem at all strange anymore. So here we go. My muse is a corpse, which actually has a picture on it now. This is an old copy of Going Alone. I really should give myself a newer copy. Good Evening Crusader 2006. So the newer one has Emily's art in it. And she just finished another, well, she didn't finish. The way that it works now, she finished a new drawing, so to speak. The way that it works now is that I have an idea for a piece of art. Hey, Erica. And I share that idea with Emily, typically via text, even though she and I do sit down and talk about it. Typically, I'll send her a text description of it, and she'll come up with a first draft and send it to me via text as well. And we'll look at it, and I'll send her messages back. So it's a whole correspondence thing. Every once in a while, we'll sit together, go out to lunch, and talk about it. But, pardon me, it seems that it works better when we have this dialogue back and forth in the course of our days. It's kind of fun and interesting, and you can see how it unfolds, and then she sends me new versions and drafts. The new one that she's sending me right now has potential to be my favorite so far. Hello, welcome. Someone just went to the website from San Francisco. It unfortunately though, the art has nothing to do with anything in the book. Besides one concept that I added. I've talked about this before, so I won't go into depth. I think I talked about it last week, how I added a concept called infrastructure, and then I changed that concept to be the anchor hold. And where it went from there was that this idea of a rock sticking out of the water, and I'll be quick because I think I have talked about this too, and the person sitting on the rock. And the tide rises, the waves come, the sea settles, sometimes there's a wind, rain comes, and it's our task to try to find some balance and equanimity on that rock, despite the weather, despite the circumstance around us. So initially the art that I asked Emily to make was going to be a single person sitting on a rock with the sea around them. But then she and I talked about it. This is one where we actually went out and had lunch together and talked about it. And we came up with the idea of having multiple rocks in the sea with a person perched on every rock. And this was Emily's idea. The circumstance of the sea is different around every person. In one person, the sea is calm and they're seated well above the waves, well above the sea. In another one, the sea is higher, the tide is higher. There's cresting water and crashing against the rocks, threatening to get them wet or maybe knock them off. In another one, there's someone sitting all sullen with rain coming down. And in another one, she added this one, the person is standing on the rock and looking out. Well, a great wave is heaving up behind them, threatening to wash them off the rock. So at this level, it's got all the characters in it, right? The next level is that she and I will work on the depth and the details. So, for example, I asked her to put more darkness into the water because the water represents death, and life is the little circumstance we have perched on the rock, right? So we worry about death getting the best of us, or circumstance getting us. Good evening to you, who in Japanese. Nihon nantoka nantoka. Good evening to you. So I asked her to put some darkness into the water to represent death. She's already got the atmospheric effects. She did one image that is at the very front of the book, the library image, but really just, wow, that's her favorite, and mine too. So we're trying to find a way to make this one kind of have that same quality, that almost like an electric air to it, like it's almost energy is coming off of it. So that's very exciting to see. So anyway, I'm going to read to you just a little bit from My Muse is a Corpse, which is, I think, the third or fourth section of the book. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fourth one. So it's after the introduction, followed by the cast, where I relate all the characters in the book, followed by Siberia Bridge, which is where I wrote the story, and then comes My Muse is a Corpse. Let's go. My Muse is a Corpse, sensing we are alone. The world's broad, bleak atmosphere was all so comfortless. Such, indeed, is the impression which it makes on every new adventurer, even if he plunges into it while the warmest tide of life is bubbling through his veins. Nathaniel Hawthorne. This section of my book chronicles the 3-week experience of having my desert inspiration follow me home to the city. I had no idea how long this muse would stay, though I'm glad I could record a little of what it had to say. This experience began on March 4th, 2017, and was complete on March 23rd. Indeed, so when I go out to the desert, I typically am visited by my inspiration, the thing I call the muse. And I can write out there. I can write, that's the sections of the book like I showed last night that are the parentheses. That's what this is, the parentheses section. Those are all bits and pieces that I wrote under the influence of the muse. The curious thing that I begin this chapter with was how, for a 3-week period of time, the muse seemingly followed me back from the desert, and I was able to write in such a way here in the city. I have enjoyed a long relationship with my muse, which tends to arrive suddenly, urgently demanding I record my thoughts before she withdraws, and leaves me with nothing more of substance to think or say. I first met my muse in my early 20s, while living alone for several years on an empty stretch of beach in Northern California. The muse would meet me sometimes at night, while I walked alone along Moonstone Beach, just south of Trinidad, watching the sea glide up and back across the gentle shore slope, expiring in shallow, sweeping, wet sheets, the last energies of powerful waves crashing loudly in the distant dark. I would walk then with my moondog, which was the name I gave the reflection of the moon upon the wet sand, glistening with a brilliant, cold, pale light, following me everywhere the earth was wet, a loyal companion in her every phase. So indeed, those were my early 20s, up there in Arcata, living on the beach, walking at night across the 20-mile stretch of empty sand. Great waves crashing in the distance, cold water swooping up the shallow incline of the sand as I walked barefoot with the moon above, keeping a little image of the moon beside me, shivering in the wet. The words would come to me then, although I had nothing good to do with them. I had no container in which to place them. I had no canvas on which to draw, and no journal in which to write. The thoughts simply came and washed away with the next wave. The muse has since been with me always, through every decade of my life, speaking via the mediums of poetry, prose, art, and video. She visits at her leisure and pleasure, though I have found that activities such as walking alone, listening to music, and the moderate application of alcohol have a way of luring her out, though she never stays for long. And if I fail to listen or write down what she has to say when she's saying it, then her message will surely be lost. My muse will never speak to me in the presence of others, though sometimes I detect her voice when I read good books or hear interesting people talk. It's funny, I always know that the muse is there because it can't not be there. It's a consequence of the biochemistry in my brain. Although circumstance lure her out, I haven't heard the muse now for months, maybe 5 months, maybe 6 months, since not even the last time I went out to Siberia. She's largely gone still and quiet, but I'm fine with that. My distractions are elsewhere. As I deliberately replace the word attentions with distractions, because that's what I mean more truly. My distractions are indeed elsewhere, they're in with my responsibilities. And the muse is bottled up somewhere. Woo, 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 maybe wanting to say something but having nothing to say. Probably not wanting to say something because I give her no circumstance or opportunity anymore since I've stopped living the inspired life that brings her out. It's a curious thing how that circumstance is one where I have to be challenged in both a physical and a mental way with my life practically, knowing going into a dangerous situation. The lesser extent of the danger is irrelevant to the fact that it's dangerous. Going alone into the desert is dangerous, or going alone into the mountains of Japan or elsewhere. Sitting around here in the Safe and Sane at the Marriott Hotel in the lobby of this largely COVID empty circumstances is not so dangerous. Although the COVID is there, I do keep my mask handy. I wore it all the way in. Curious this how it is. This hotel, normally just teeming with people, is just largely empty. There's a small group over by the pool, but I was going to get a beer at the bar, but even the beer is cleared out. They've shut everything down. The music's off. The hotel is largely gone. Yet here. I have never fooled myself into thinking that my muse is anything more than my own creativity. I know that there is no supernatural entity visiting me with inspiration, and I'm aware that this creativity is subject to my own circumstance and well-being, and that my muse will die with me, or perhaps one day falter and grow silent when my mental energies, which now produce her, begin to fail. This process has already begun, in earnest. Or my will and interest shift to elsewhere or no place at all. Thus the urgency to write when the muse speaks. Thus my desire to share before both she and I grow silent and are gone. Yeah, so the muse is nothing supernatural. I don't think there's any spirit that is imparting any thoughts upon me or any words upon me. It's basically all, like I said, circumstance and biology. And a willfulness, a willful creativity, and a creative interest and urge. That's why I call her a corpse, because I am ultimately, when I die, the muse will die with me. And that knowledge that this creativity is ephemeral and is short-lived as a season, reminds me of both the urgency to capture what I hear, as well as the colors the facts of what I hear with death. It colors everything I think about or write with I almost said morbid, but it's not. I say morbid because it's supposed to be morbid, but it's not to me. It's almost this overwhelming fact of mortality and the very short nature of things, which fills me with excitement and promise that I want to roll up my sleeves and make good use of the time that I've got left. The following words are the product of my muse, spoken to me at odd times, requiring I step aside from work to write down what I hear, or pull my motorcycle to the side of the road to do the same. They tell a story in a way, in bits and pieces, ideas strung together over time, revealing a train of thought buoyant of life, cognizant of death, and catalyzed of action. I am my muse's shadow author, though she and I both know she never really exists. So from there, this is a very short chapter in terms of just the prose. It's just 2 pages. From there begins the notes from my muse, and that's the parentheses laden, leaning, the parentheses leaning, and tilde defined. See, there's one there, there's another one, sections. Each of these little blocks of text, it came to me as like a moment's flash. That's the product of the muse. Please do this more often, Bobby Goof Vlog says. Well, okay, I will. What's this book, you ask? This is a book called Going Alone. It's a book that I wrote. And it's the story of what I found, or didn't find, more accurately, out there in the desert, in the deep desert, as well as in the emptiness of the mountains of Japan. And then I wrote down And so I'm reading from a chapter, that's one of the first ones. Here we go. I'll read a little bit of the tilde sections, and then I'm going to wind up and go home. Emily, my daughter, and Yumiko, my wife, are out shopping a little bit this evening. I was working today. It's Sunday. I was doing my driving school instruction stuff. I had 2 really good students today. In fact, one of them might actually see this. Hey there. Because he asked about YouTube, and I showed him my channel, so he subscribed. So, hey there, you did good today. You know who you are. You did really, really good today. You're going to make it. So it was a good day. It was a good day. It's a good day. It's always a good day when I feel like making some forward progress, making, in terms of making the world a little bit better, right? And the work that I did with my one student today, both of my students, I just had 2 students today. Usually I have 3. I had made good progress with both of them. But the one student in particular, who has a more challenging circumstance, I won't get into any details, except to say that if you start to learn to drive later in life, it's a little harder to pick up. The longer you wait, the harder it is to get. On the flip side, the older you are, then you tend to take it more seriously too. So teenagers can be pretty reckless. Anyway, you're doing good. If you see this. Excuse me. I'll read just a little bit. So Emily, like I said, Emily and Yumiko are out shopping. I took the dogs on a super long walk. That was another thing that made me feel really good, making pets happy. It's in here somewhere. It's a list of things that I want to be caught doing, and that would be the good. And, well, I don't want to be caught, I said, things I would like to be caught, I would like to die doing, right? They're in the process of doing good things. But on second thought, I don't want to be, the thing, the quote is making a pet happy, because, pet, you make happy here, a little treat, die of a heart attack. That's not so bad, although it would be distressful to the dog. But I wouldn't want to die while giving my dogs a walk. Well, I do belt them, I do, tie their leashes to my belt, so they wouldn't go anywhere, but still. So anyway, and then the other thing I did was I rescued a honeybee from the middle of the pool during my swim. I found it out there in the pool, and it was the last part of the day, and the sun was shining, probably had another 30-40 minutes of light on this, and the whole pool area was dark, the water was cold. I fished the, I kind of pushed the bee to the side of the edge and then flicked it out of the water, and then got a leaf, and a dry leaf, and put it up on, first I put it up on a little pole, but it fell off. And then I found a better place, and I got it up on top in the last rays of sun. And then I went back and completed my swim. And when I came back out, the honeybee was all dried off and moving its wings a little bit. And I was like, good, another good use of time. Here, let's read a little bit, just a few more, and then I'll sign off and go to my family. Notes from my muse. It's flattery to call my muse a corpse. No, before I do that, I have to point out, I believe that the character of my writing is vastly different between the prose that I just read and the prose that I'm about to read. The prose that I just read is the type of stuff that I have to work at. So I'll write 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then I'll go back and I'll edit them, and I'll change words, and I'll find typos, and that grammar doesn't work, and I'll change things up, and over time it changes and changes and changes. This stuff over here, that never happens. This is exactly as it came out of my mind. And 2 things. One, I don't allow myself to edit because it's the product of the muse, right? Because after the lightning strikes, I can't go back and reclaim that lightning energy, right? So for good or worse, typos, corrections, whatever, typos, I'll fix a typo word, but any corrections, I will not change them. Someone went to Franklin, Massachusetts. Is that where you went, to the website? So also, this tends to be more poetic. The words flow together. I can't write like this when I try. I couldn't sit down right now with a pen and paper and write like that. That's why it's the product of the muse. And typically, I can't even control when it comes. I'll be riding my motorcycle along, thinking 3 disparate thoughts. Suddenly, lightning strikes. And someone just went from Washington. Is that Polly up? Washington, welcome to the website. The lightning strikes, and I can hear the words in my head. I mean, it's like someone speaking to me, blah, 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 blah. It's like, whoa, okay, and I will, in a hurry, pull the motorcycle over to the side of the road, and I keep a pen and paper in the little thing in the motor tank bag, whip it up and write it down real quick. because within if I don't do that, I can't even, it has a shelf life of about 3 or 4 minutes from the moment the lightning strikes, and it's gone, and I will never get it back. And many times I've had lightning strikes from the Muse, and I haven't recorded it. It's gone forever. Who cares, right? It's just something, but there you go. So anyway, here's a first such example. It's flattery to call my Muse a corpse, as she is so much less, having never been alive. She has no still heart, no snuffed out conscience, no darkened lattice of memory, and certainly no legacy of love and caring to echo through time in life's wake. I call her dead by means of convenience, to call attention to what she has not, to highlight how far she is removed from the dearest possessions of life, and to enshrine her grave indifference with the startling, fearful aspect of what cannot possibly love, and has more in common with sand than the buoyant, striving, animate community of life. That's just me trying to describe my Muse, which is like windblown sand in the desert, no more alive or animate or caring than any such things. And so Erica says you should use a voice recorder to capture these pieces. That's an interesting idea. That's a good idea, actually. I do have one. Another one. My Muse is blind, deaf, mute, and dead. She is the inorganic fact of reality, the inanimate ambition of entropy, the chill, dark waste between the stars, the uncaring substrate of physics and chemistry, bound, secured, and destined towards some emotionless mathematical end. That's just me trying to sum up how my Muse is really the inspiration, the awe-inspiring inspiration of that darkness that's above all of this light, right? That emptiness that we tend to ignore behind the thrill of life, right? The deep waste of a universe that seems not only not to care, but incapable of caring. Another, maybe two more. Crossing now from the place where I share life with humanity into the vast void of indifference, at once I find my own voice again. At last, the Muse returns. I actually remember when I wrote that little one right there. I was at Siberia. I had arrived at night, parked the bike, I had my backpack on. I had everything organized in such a way that I didn't even have to do anything. I just literally had to ride up to Siberia, put the kickstand down, park the bike, make sure it was secure, the wind couldn't blow it over, and then take off the helmet, put the helmet on there, and then just my backpack was on, and just take off into the night. If you've seen my videos, that's sometimes how I do it. I arrive at night and just hike all the way until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, night hiking, without really knowing where I'm going, no flashlight or anything. And I remember hiking over the railroad tracks, up through the wastes of the Siberia ghost town, over a berm that the BNSF railroad had built, and down. And that was the moment when I crossed down under that berm out into the open desert that I felt the Muse return, like the fact that I had left behind the safe and sane, the character and quality of all of this distraction, just distraction. After I'd left all this behind and I have faced nothing but an empty night, just a void of darkness to hike into, the Muse came filtering back, and the words began to tickle and play off my tongue, periodically being recorded. And on nights like that, what I do is I keep my phone in my pocket and I whip it out and type it out, whatever it says. Yesterday's long desert sojourn was a new experience of indifference, a recognition that the cold shoulder of nature is made of stone. That was probably coming back from that same adventure. Probably these are part and parcel, right? Going out and coming back, and then remembering that for the day and the night that I'd spent out in the desert, I'd found only emptiness. And here's the next day, this one right here, I think it's. Yesterday's desert hike left little impression at the time, almost a disappointment in fact. Yet in hindsight, I re-see those far and empty places. My thoughts come back to them over and again. I remember this very distinctly. That hike was a disappointment, and I name all my hikes, and I don't remember what the name of that hike was, but I do remember arriving at Siberia at night, probably around 9 o'clock at night, probably it was a November night like this, getting off the bike, leaving the bike behind, and walking all evening, into like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning before I slept somewhere in the desert, waking up at dawn somewhere, not exactly knowing where I was. And then, even though I felt the muse's presence after I had left Siberia, the perimeter of Siberia, no words came to me. That whole hike was spent as basically an ambition of expiring energy, of pushing around the desert, of walking and stumbling and getting sweaty and cold and hot and scared and lonely and inspired and afraid, but nothing ever percolated. I never really got any words. And when I came back, I did that second quote about how the past hike had been. And then the next day I made that next comment about, and I remember this very distinctly, going back, I remember before the next day, riding the motorcycle back home thinking, what a waste of time. What the hell have I just done going out in the desert? What a waste of time. But then the next day was when the words began to percolate and come to me. And more importantly than the words, the lasting impressions that linger in my mind now, that are burned into here like important life memories. And here, this will be the last one. I think this is a few days later after I got back. I'm haunted by this past weekend's hike like no hike before. I'm pretty sure I went further than I should, deeper than I thought I could. My reward, the deepest drought of indifference my mind can yet withstand. Such an awful, fearful, terrible truth. Yes, I'll leave it at that. That was the gift of that hike. Not a gift. That was the consequence of that hike, because there's no gift giver. That was the consequence of that hike, was really coming back, having felt I had gone further into indifference, or into the presence, into the midst of indifference, presence, than ever before. And the sense that gave me that it was real or not real is more important. It's hard, I can't find the vocabulary to describe the emptiness, the presence and emptiness of a nothing. How do you describe a nothing when it seems to have some character that is a result of its non-existence? I don't think I've got the language for that. I don't know if there's the vocabulary. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and drop off. Just under 30 minutes. I wish you all the best. A safe upcoming holiday if you're here in America. And for me, I'm going to put my mask on, take my glasses off, shut this down, and walk across the street and have dinner with my family. I wish you all the best. Remember, be safe, but not too safe. Oh, I just saw a whole bunch of comments fly past. Oh, just one. The idea of ending one's life in the wilderness. Yeah. The idea of that, huh? It's funny. Good night. Good night, everybody.